A forest that moved, trees that whispered, branches that swayed as if alive. And then, the forest swallowed 20,000 Roman soldiers whole. It wasn't just another battle. It was the most brutal ambush in the history of ancient Rome. 3 legions marched into the Teutoburg forest and never came out. No cities, no walls, no mercy. Only rain, mud, and betrayal waiting beneath the leaves. For 3 days, the empire that conquered the world was destroyed by the land it tried to tame. It started long before the first spear was thrown. Rome already ruled most of the known world, from the deserts of North Africa to the gray rivers of Northern Europe. But beyond the Rhine River, a wide river that marked the edge of the Roman Empire, there stretched a wild land the Romans called Germania. To them, it was not a nation. It was a mystery wrapped in fog and forest. Imagine endless woods, no cities, no marble roads, no temples of stone, only pine, wind, and warriors who melted into the trees like ghosts. To Rome, Germania was chaos. To the Germanic tribes who lived there, Rome was a giant that never stopped marching. For years, Roman legions had crossed the Rhine every summer. They built forts, cut roads, and forced the tribes to pay taxes or swear loyalty. When they spoke of peace, they really meant control. In the year 7 AD, Emperor Augustus decided to turn this wilderness into another province of the empire. He sent a man he trusted, Publius Quinctilius Varus, a seasoned Roman governor known for bringing order to troubled lands. Varus was calm, educated, and believed that Roman law could civilize anyone. He brought judges, clerks, and tax collectors, convinced that even these wild tribes would one day thank Rome for teaching them peace. But among the Germans was someone who knew Rome far too well. His name was Arminius, or Herman in his native tongue, a prince of the Cherusci tribe. Years earlier, he had been taken to Rome as a hostage, a common practice to ensure his people's obedience. There, he learned Latin, studied Roman strategy, earned citizenship, and fought alongside the legions. Rome had trained him to be the perfect soldier. It also taught him exactly how to destroy them. When Arminius returned home, he found his homeland slowly disappearing under Roman boots. Roman patrols marched through his forests. Roman laws replaced his people's customs. Tribes began turning against one another. Some obeyed Rome, others resisted and were burned for it. Rome called it civilization. Arminius called it chains. Yet on the surface, he remained loyal. He dined at Varus's table, wore a Roman officer's armor, and spoke flawless Latin. Varus trusted him completely. He saw in Arminius the perfect bridge between Rome and the tribes. But behind the calm eyes, Arminius was building something Rome could never see, a secret alliance. He rode from tribe to tribe, whispering that Rome was strong in armor, but weak in spirit, that the forest itself could fight for them if they stood together. One chieftain at a time, the whispers turned into vows. The fire was spreading under the leaves. By the summer of 9 AD, the trap was ready. A small rebellion was staged far to the east, bait for Varus to chase. Arminius, still pretending to be his loyal scout, advised the governor to march through a shortcut known as the Teutoburg forest, a dense maze of trees and swamps no Roman army had ever entered. Varus agreed. To him, it was just another mission to enforce order. To Arminius, it was destiny, and somewhere among those silent pines, history waited with its blade drawn. The summer of the year 9 AD, the Roman army was on the move again. 3 legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, marched east under the command of Governor Publius Quinctilius Varus. Nearly 20,000 soldiers, plus thousands of camp followers, slaves, traders, and wagons loaded with supplies. It was not a small expedition. It was an army that believed no one could touch it. They left their strongholds near the Rhine River, heading toward what Varus believed was a local uprising. Arminius, his trusted German ally, rode at his side, calm, loyal, and always ready with advice. He spoke of a shortcut, a safe path through the heart of Germania that would save days of marching. The shortcut was the Teutoburg Forest, a dense green ocean stretching between low hills and marshes. At first, the road was wide and firm. Roman engineers had built bridges and cleared trees in past campaigns. The soldiers joked, sang, and marched in perfect rhythm, shields shining under the gray northern sun. But as the column moved deeper into the woods, the sky began to change. The air grew thick and cold. The light dimmed even though it was midday. The trees stood close together, their branches interlocking like prison bars. The road narrowed. Then it turned to mud. Wagons groaned, horses slipped. Rain began to fall, a slow, chilling drizzle that soaked through every cloak. Still, Varus pushed forward. He had been told the rebellion was urgent, a village in flames, a tribe in revolt. He trusted Arminius completely. So when Arminius suggested he ride ahead to rally friendly tribes, Varus agreed without question. Arminius saluted, turned his horse, and disappeared into the trees. The Romans marched on. Hour after hour, the forest swallowed them. The sound of boots and armor echoed strangely under the canopy, as if the trees were listening. That night, the army made camp on uneven ground. No one liked it. The forest pressed too close. The rain didn't stop. The fires smoked instead of burning. Some men swore they heard horns in the distance, deep animal sounds rolling through the dark. Others laughed it off. "Wolves," they said, "just wolves." Varus sat inside his tent, writing reports for Rome. He believed tomorrow would be another long march, nothing more. But outside in the shadows, hundreds of fires were already burning, fires that did not belong to Rome. The forest was awake now, and it was waiting. Morning came slowly, if it came at all. A thick gray mist clung to the trees of the Teutoburg forest, so heavy that the sun could barely breathe through it. The Roman column stretched for miles, winding like a metal snake through mud and rain. Shields were slick. Boots sank. Voices echoed and vanished. Varus rode near the front, calm but tired. He trusted the day would be routine. Another hard march, maybe some scattered resistance. Behind him, the banners of the 17th Legion dragged wet in the air. Then somewhere in the fog came the first sound, a short, deep blast, a horn, not Roman. Another answered it, then another, from every side. Before anyone could react, javelins rained down from the trees. They came out of nowhere, from above, from the shadows, from the green itself. Men screamed, shields rose, horses panicked. A centurion shouted for his men to form up. But there was no room, no space to build the famous Roman wall of shields. The path was too narrow, the forest too close. They were trapped in a tunnel of trees. The ambush had begun. From the ridge to the right, Germanic warriors surged out, barefoot, painted, their long hair tied back, faces streaked with mud and lime. They vanished between the trunks, then appeared again in another place, striking and disappearing like ghosts. They knew every inch of this forest, every hollow, every stream, every piece of ground that could swallow a man whole. Varus tried to regain control. "Close ranks! Keep moving! Don't stop!" But his words drowned under the chaos. The wagons jammed. Horses reared. The line broke apart like ice under pressure. Still, the Romans fought. Trained to obey, even in hell, they lifted shields and formed small clusters, fighting back against enemies they could barely see. Arrows and spears thudded into wood and flesh alike. The sound was wet, fast, endless. On a slope above, Arminius watched. He was no longer the polite Roman ally in polished armor. He wore a wolfskin cloak, his face marked with ash and rain. Around him, tribal leaders roared commands in harsh, guttural voices. They did not charge blindly. They struck with precision, exactly where the column was weakest. It was strategy born from years of learning Rome's own playbook. By midday, hundreds of Romans were dead. The rest stumbled forward, dragging their wounded, trying to escape the trees that seemed to close behind them. The rain turned the forest floor to a river of mud and blood. Every mile felt like a battle of its own. When night fell, they built a makeshift camp on high ground. Wet, frightened, and silent. No one sang, no one slept. They did not yet know it, but the forest would not let them leave. This was no rebellion, it was an execution, one that had just begun. The second day, the rain did not stop. It thickened. Every drop seemed to fall heavier, colder, as if the sky itself had joined the ambush. The Romans moved slowly now, soaked and shivering. Their bright armor had turned dark with mud. Their red cloaks were brown, torn, heavy as lead. What had begun as a disciplined march was now a desperate crawl. The forest was endless. Every hill looked the same. Every tree was another wall. Varus ordered scouts forward, but none returned. He began to realize what he had refused to believe. Arminius was gone, and the forest belonged to him. Along the march, the Germanic warriors struck again. Never from the same place twice. They attacked from ridges, from behind fallen logs, from clouds of mist. Arrows came from nowhere, hitting men before they could even raise their shields. Then the screams, then silence, then the sound of rain. Varus tried to form battle lines, but there was no battlefield, no open space, no order. The wagons bogged down, blocking the road. Dead horses lay half submerged in mud. Every attempt to move forward cost more lives. By afternoon, he gave the order to stop and make camp. But there was no high ground, no dry ground. The men built ditches that filled instantly with water. They tried to light fires, but the wood was too wet to burn. Cold crept into their bones. Their food was ruined, their arrows soggy. Even the strongest began to shake, not from fear alone, but from exhaustion. In the chaos, Varus gathered his officers. Maps meant nothing here. He drew in the mud with a stick, marking where he believed the river in open country must be. "We break out tomorrow," he said. "We leave the wagons. We take only what we can carry. We fight our way west, toward the Rhine." His men nodded, though they no longer believed the Rhine was reachable. It was hundreds of miles away, and the forest grew darker with every step. Far above them, hidden on the ridge, Arminius watched through the curtain of rain. He did not rush the attack. He wanted the Romans to feel the forest, to feel it closing in, to realize that their discipline, their armor, their roads meant nothing here. As night came, thunder rolled through the valley. It wasn't just a storm, it was the sound of a world changing. Inside the Roman camp, soldiers whispered the same question again and again. "Where is Arminius?" And somewhere beyond the trees, under the sound of rain and thunder, Arminius smiled. The answer was simple. He was everywhere. The third day, the forest no longer felt like a place. It felt alive. Every sound had meaning. Every shadow seemed to breathe. The Romans were breaking. They marched with hollow eyes, their armor rusting under constant rain. Their formation, once a symbol of precision, had dissolved into fragments of lost men moving through mud. Then the terrain changed again. The path sloped upward, squeezed between a steep ridge on one side and a swamp on the other. The narrow corridor forced the army into a single line. Varus hoped the slope meant they were nearing open country. He was wrong. From the ridge above came a sound that froze the world. A deep, rolling horn, long and low. Then the forest exploded. Thousands of Germanic warriors surged from the ridge. They were not a chaotic mob. They were hunters. Their shields were round, painted black with ash. Their javelins were light, perfect for throwing in the rain. Their shouts echoed through the trees like thunder in a cave. The Romans tried to form ranks, but there was no space. Mud sucked at their feet. The wagons blocked retreat, and from the ridge the enemy rained death. Arrows, stones, spears. The forest itself became a weapon. Trees felled ahead of time now crashed down on the path, crushing men and horses. It was not a battle. It was a massacre designed with patience. Arminius, now wearing a wolfskin cloak and carrying a Roman sword, rode along the ridge shouting in both Latin and his native tongue. To his people he cried, "The forest fights with us!" To the Romans below, he called out in perfect Latin, "Where is your order now, Varus? Where is Rome's glory?" Then he raised his spear and pointed down. At that signal, warriors hidden behind a newly built earthen wall surged forward. It stretched along the ridge, an unseen barrier of timber and dirt the Germans had been building for weeks. It funneled the Romans into a deadly pocket between the swamp and the slope. Every attempt to climb the bank ended in slaughter. The Romans fought back bravely. The 17th Legion tried to storm the wall but slipped and fell, their heavy armor dragging them down. The 18th tried to wheel around to flank the attackers, but bogged down in the swamp, men screaming as they sank knee-deep, then waist-deep, unable to lift their shields. The 19th held the rear, trying to cover the retreat, but arrows came from behind too. They were surrounded. They just didn't know it yet. For hours, the battle turned into fragments of desperate fighting, pockets of Romans forming small circles, locking shields, stabbing at shadows. Every time they repelled an attack, another wave came from a different direction. It was warfare the Romans had never faced. Not in open fields, but in a living maze where the enemy could vanish between trees faster than a man could blink. Arminius's tactics were ruthless and brilliant. He used the rain and fog to hide his movements, sending signals by horn. One long note to attack, two short ones to pull back. The tribes struck, vanished, and struck again, bleeding the legions inch by inch. Every minute drained Roman discipline. Every tree became an ambush point. By midday, Varus rode through the chaos, shouting for order. "Hold the line! Keep formation!" But his voice was swallowed by thunder and screams. The standard of the 17th, the silver eagle of Rome, fell into the mud. Men dove to save it, dying on top of one another. The eagle disappeared beneath blood and soil. When the rain finally eased, the silence was worse than the battle. The air reeked of iron and smoke. Bodies covered the narrow road like fallen leaves. Varus looked up at the ridge, and for a brief second, he saw Arminius standing there, motionless, framed by smoke. Their eyes met across the chaos. For Varus, it was no longer a campaign. It was judgment. The forest had become Rome's grave. Night fell like a curtain of smoke. The fires of the fallen flickered and died, leaving only the sound of rain and the slow creak of trees. The Romans had no camp, no walls, no order. They were scattered like small knots of men clinging to one another in the dark. When dawn finally came, it brought no comfort. The forest steamed with fog. The air smelled of iron and ash. Birds circled high above, drawn by what lay below. Varus rode among the remnants of his army. What he saw was not an army anymore. It was a procession of ghosts. Men walked without helmets, some without weapons, some blind from wounds. They stumbled past wagons broken in half, bodies twisted in the mud, the banners of Rome hanging limp and torn. From every side came the same sound again. The horn, low, endless. It was not a call to charge. It was a heartbeat, the forest's heartbeat. Then came the final trap. The survivors reached an open space, a clearing between ridges. It looked like safety. But beneath the grass lay hidden trenches and sharpened stakes. As the Romans pushed forward, the ground itself betrayed them. Horses fell screaming, lines collapsed, and from all directions the tribes emerged. Thousands of them, their voices a storm of fury. The Romans fought like men who already knew they were dead. They fought for honor now, not victory. Small groups formed circles, locking shields, stabbing outward until the last man fell. The sound of steel faded into the thudding rhythm of axes and clubs. On a ridge overlooking the carnage, Arminius sat astride his horse. His armor was Roman, his heart was not. He watched without shouting, without joy. This was the end he had planned. And now that it was real, it felt heavier than he had imagined. Below, Publius Quinctilius Varus, the governor of Rome's northern frontier, realized the truth. There was no rescue, no road back to the Rhine, no empire waiting beyond the trees, only silence. He turned to his remaining officers. They stood drenched, wounded, faces gray with exhaustion. Varus spoke quietly, his voice breaking for the first time. "Rome will not see us crawl." Then he drew his sword. The chronicles say he fell by his own hand, a Roman ending to a Roman tragedy. By nightfall, the forest belonged entirely to the dead. The 17th, 18th, and 19th legions had ceased to exist. Their eagles, the sacred silver standards of Rome, were lost in the mud. An empire's pride buried under roots and rain. When the storm cleared days later, Arminius walked among the aftermath. He did not smile. He ordered the wounded Romans given a quick death, mercy of a kind. He looked at the broken weapons, the shattered armor, and said only, "The forest keeps what it takes." For Rome, the news was unthinkable. When word reached Emperor Augustus, he tore his robe and cried, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions." Rome never reclaimed them. The frontier of the empire would retreat to the Rhine. Germania would remain unconquered. And in the centuries to come, the Battle of Teutoburg Forest would live as the day the empire learned fear. The forest still stands. And if you walk deep enough into its mist, they say you can still hear it, the horns, the rain, and the echoes of 3 lost legions that marched into the green and never came out.